Okay, yes. So, welcome back to the Decolonize and Discover Festival podcast, a offshoot podcast from the Decolonize and Discover Festival happening this June in Charleston, Massachusetts. You are here with Journee LaFond and my cohort and co-host Jes and Journee, and we are extremely lucky to be sitting here with Raquel Skellington, who is our professional LARPer, our favorite NPC, and so much more. Please say hello, everybody.
Oh, well, hi everybody. I'm Raquel. I'm a turbo nerd that's been LARPing for 11 years, and 6 of those years professionally,
My
which
goodness.
is really fun.
Just
So let's talk a little bit about that. You say you LARP professionally. What does that mean?
So I do a whole range of things. So I do corporate LARPs. I do sensitivity readings for LARPs. I model for LARPs and LARP companies. I Wow, there's a lot. I do marketing. I do marketing consulting. I am an influencer for LARPs. It's like I wear a lot of little hats.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So that is already so impressive. And I know that you mentioned sort of like LARPing professionally. Can you take us through how a person gets into something like LARPing professionally?
By accident.
Yeah.
It's always by accident. Well, I never woke up and thought that this would ever happen. I really wanted to be a software engineer for Microsoft, so that's what I thought would happen instead. Um, but I had started LARPing at 15, and I was always told by the photographer there, oh, you should model, you be a natural. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I'm ugly. And that was my full cope up until about 18. And then I did try it, and then my portfolio took off. And eventually I got a call from a LARP that was like, hey, you're well known for your costuming and you're a model and you LARP. So why don't we just do this? We're gonna put you in our like trailer and all of our cool little promotional material. And that's that. And then it's like when that LARP did that and these things crossed over, they never uncrossed. And so that's kind of how it started. And I'm lucky to have worked with companies like Epic Armory, Kalamazoo, and Nemesis. It's weird and funny when fellow LARPers go on websites and they're like, oh, I found you.
Yeah.
And there you are right there. And I'm like, that's me.
Oh
That's
my,
me. So it's a pretty cool experience getting the opportunity to go around the world and LARP. It's neat.
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm thrilled and I'm so glad that like something like this exists. I'm so glad that you have like this epic presence. Um, and you mentioned that you traveled around the world. Can you tell us like some of the places you've been in, like what has been your experience being like this professional in this space?
Well, I've been very lucky to go to Europe many times. Denmark, Sweden, the UK, Poland,
Right.
Ukraine, uh,
Right.
Israel. Oh God, Canada. I guess that's international. That
It's
counts.
international. Yeah.
It counts.
It counts. There's so many places, and in a way too, with like my content and where it reaches, even like Brazil. I haven't been to Brazil, but like there's like a whole small Brazilian subsect of LARPers that are like major fans of
Yeah.
my content, and they're like, how do we do this here? How do we bring it? And I'm trying to help them make it
Yeah.
happen. I'm like, guys, you can do this in Brazil. You got this.
Come on,
So
Brazil.
it's been really interesting because LARPing is also a really interesting way to learn about other cultures and other people, and really immerse yourself. And I have been to many experiences where they don't speak English at the LARP. Like
Mhm.
it is if a player makes a decision to speak English and play with me, and there is, I think, a motive of respect that you gain when you are overseas, because it's like, wow, I'm a guest in your country, I'm a guest in this space,
Yeah.
and the fact that you guys are so willing to include me by either speaking with me in English or making a little plot for me where I can understand what's going on is beyond considerate and kind. And like, LARP is very much what you put in is what you'll get out, and what you give is what you get. And if you're fully giving in with your heart, like the best role play that you can to lift your fellow person, even if you don't really understand what the hell is going on or what they're saying, they will always give it back. That is a universal thing across the planet.
Yes.
I love that. I aspire to that level of bravery. Can you say that you were always this outgoing?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Since birth. I've been like big E extrovert my whole life. That is one thing I will say is consistent.
I love that, and say it with your whole chest. You did mention that, you know, you started modeling and you kind of initially were like, oh no, I'm ugly, which is absolutely extremely false. Like, Raquel is gorgeous, gorgeous. For anybody who's not seeing the footage right now.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But can you talk to me about like sort of that journey from like feeling like, okay, like maybe I couldn't model to being like this, again, this professional, and like you're doing all of
This
these things.
international superstar.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely, I think for me, you know, when I was growing up, I went to a mostly white school, and I didn't get bullied for being of color. Actually, I got bullied for being a weird little monster girl and a goth chick with extraneous interests. But I think a lot of the media that I was consuming at that time made me feel like in order to be beautiful, you had to be white, you had to be pale, you had to be X, Y, or Z. And there was a long period of time in my life where I just wore blue contacts or green, and I wore a foundation shade that was like 4 shades lighter than my skin. I didn't go out into the sun. And I thought, of course, teenage logic, that totally made me not black or of color. I was totally not that. Looking back at pictures, I was a clown because I never passed for white, not even with everything. Maybe a spicy Italian.
Yeah.
But like, I had to learn not only that I was beautiful, not because how other people perceive me. I think it came when I was in my late teens, early 20s, where I started dressing the way I wanted freely, and I was out of school, so nobody was bullying me anymore. And embracing what I wanted to be and what I wanted to wear full-heartedly made me feel beautiful. And you know, I feel like as soon as I started doing that, you know, I became beautiful. But I also think, you know, I went through in my career around like 21, 22, a really violent internet attack online by like white people in the community.
Yeah.
And it made me realize that like it doesn't matter how approachable you are. It doesn't matter if you play the white man's game. It doesn't matter if you're the most agreeable POC ever to exist. You're still gonna get shot. And so that was the second stage, I think, of me fully coming into my own and just being like, I don't care. I don't care. Fuck it. Excuse my French, but like, I don't care. I'm gonna just be me, and I'm gonna embrace my hair. I'm gonna embrace my eyes. I'm gonna embrace everything I am, because you can't take that away from me. Nobody can take that away from me. And if I put this into my work, into my characters, it can't be replicated because it belongs to me. It is my story. It is a part of me. And and it's like when I started embracing those things, at least to me in my heart, that is when I felt beautiful. That is when I started to feel like, oh, I can do this. I am who I am, and that's okay. And I vibe with that now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Just really appreciate you being so vulnerable. And I think a lot of people will connect to that experience because it is so real. Like, as a BIPOC individual, to have that pressure growing up, you know, to lighten your skin or lighten your eyes or lighten your hair. And you just think, you know, I just want to blend in.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious because we are, as Journee so often says, the global majority.
Yeah, I know, which is crazy when you think about it that way. Or it's like this desperate want to be, I want to be their beautiful. Exactly. I want to, not my beautiful. I want to be their, I want them to consider me beautiful on their standards, and I'll hack myself to bits to get to it. And it's just, I'm telling you right now, anybody who's listening, girl or guy or they, them, it don't matter. It's not worth it. Don't do it.
worth it.
Yeah.
You're beautiful.
Find your own beautiful. I love that.
That's right.
That's right. Oh, I like that. Quotables. Fantastic. Okay, so one of the things that I am very curious about is, again, just your journey in these spaces, because we're talking about sort of like the BIPOC experience, um, and sort of growing through all of these standards that we're confronted with, whether it be like the physical Eurocentric body standards, whether it be the standards for behavior, being that respectable POC, being like really polite, being one of the good ones, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and you mentioned that you came up in like a largely white space. And so I'm wondering what your experience was sort of going into LARPing, um, and or tabletop, and carving out a space for yourself in that way. Like, what was that like for you?
So I'll be so real. Especially when you're young, you don't think you're different.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in an all white space, it's like I guess in some way cognitively deep down, but like you don't really. Like when you're a kid, you don't think about those things. You don't think about I'm different.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least back then I didn't.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the moment that like my reality was like shattered in LARP and it was just somebody coming up to me without consent, touching my midriff and going, "Oh, I thought it was leather." And my whole world completely shifted in that moment. All of a sudden, I realized I was not
Wow.
like them. I
Yeah.
was the only brown person in this game.
Yeah.
I was suddenly so hyper aware of how uncomfortable that made me. How
Mhm.
all of a sudden, oh my God, is this how they've been looking at me the whole time? Oh my God, am I that different? And like, this is at like 17 years old,
Yeah.
like 16,
Yeah.
17 years old.
Ooh.
And I'm like, oh no. And so, being a person of color in a community like that, I got a lot of bullying too. A lot of bullying that went on by people who were way too old to have been doing what they were doing to a 16-year-old girl.
Ooh.
And I think carving out a space was just me refusing not to leave. Where I'm like, I don't care. I'm here to play the game, and I'm gonna play the damn game.
Yes.
And I don't care. I just, if you make me feel weird, I'm just not gonna interact with you, or I'll report you, or whatever. But I'm here to play the game. It's not any deeper than that, and I'm not gonna let you tell me I can't play.
That's right.
And that it took a lot, and it was difficult at multiple points, especially when you start to go overseas, and all of a sudden you're traveling by yourself, and you're hyper aware that you're a woman of color, and you're getting stopped at the airport because they ask you drug mule questions, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. But creating this space in the community for myself, I knew that if I could show others that I could do it, you can do it. Because the reason I'm sitting here today is because of a Black YouTuber that no longer makes content. But if it wasn't for their YouTube videos, I never would have felt safe enough to believe that I could fit into that space. I saw them and I saw myself in them. And I hope that on every poster that I'm on or every post that I make, somebody sees that and they go, oh my God, she did that. I could do it too. Because creating a space and being the first POC to kind of plow through a community in a space like this in a professional manner, or even in a semi-professional manner, is extraordinarily difficult, because you're the first, you get the hit of all of the worst of the racism. Everybody all of a sudden defaults to you for every problem that surrounds this thing, even though you're only one person and there are many other opinions other than mine. It doesn't matter, you're the first. And all I've hoped is that this path I've been able to carve, that the grass I've been able to mow makes it way easier for other people like me to continue doing something like this in the future. Because POC deserve a space here in LARP, and we all deserve to be visible, and our stories deserve to be told.
That's right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, thank you for voicing that, the incredible pressure of being the first or being the only. And you're right, it is so easy to just get tokenized in that situation. And no one person deserves that kind of pressure to be like the ambassador for all BIPOCdom.
Oh God.
None of us wants that.
No.
But thank you for the work that you do. And like you said, making that path easier for those who come behind you.
You know, I treat this position, excuse me. I treat this position with the utmost respect because it is, I'm very lucky. I am extraordinarily lucky to be where I am today and be able to do this at the capacity at which I do it. And so I have always believed that if you're going to, with great power comes great responsibility, is what my dad always taught me. And, you know, putting love and passion into everything that you do, you know, passion sees passion. When people see that you love this, they will do it, or they will try it, because passion in this art, which I'm sorry, I have a whole theory about. Yes, LARP is an art, it's a skill, it takes practice.
Oh, most definitely.
You know, it is something that art is the innate human expression that we put out into the world, and it can change other humans. Art imitates life, and life imitates art. Being able to put your narratives and your stories out there, especially as a person of color, is important. Getting people to understand, because no matter what, there is always a meta context to LARP where, you know, if you are, I play this tavern maiden character, and this role that I am playing is absolutely something that would only be given to a white woman traditionally, where, you know, she's the damsel in distress, she's the pretty tavern maiden, all the guys are skirt chasing her, or they have to protect her, there's a love octagon. You know, that is something that is usually only meant for white women in media when it's depicted like that. And so me playing that role, because I've chosen to, is, hey, you are interacting with a Black woman and putting her in this and uplifting her in this position. And whether or not people think it does something, it is doing something, and it makes people realize, you know, oh, I didn't realize I wasn't doing that before, or I didn't realize that I wasn't engaging with this kind of part of my culture or the world that surrounds me in this thoughtful way. LARP is a fantastic tool for, you know, team building skills and empathy and all of these things. And LARP is also a beautiful, beautiful avenue for self-expression. So putting that all together, you get people that learn a lot about each other. You know, it's scary to put yourself out there, especially as a POC, you know, because you don't know how everyone's going to react. And there has been many spaces in LARP that have told us that our stories are wrong to tell. But that's not true. And your story, you deserve to tell that story however you want to say it.
Yes. Come on
Absolutely.
now. 100%. 100%. You mentioned sort of the importance of PLC being able to tell their stories and how LARP can be such a great tool for doing so. Do you have tips for folks who are maybe for the first time thinking about immersing themselves in LARP or tabletop, and like how they can do that effectively?
Yeah, so I am one of those weirdos that found LARP before tabletop, and so I never got into tabletop quite the same way for me. But as somebody who never did theater and only did LARP, my greatest recommendation to anybody that wants to kind of get into this is like, it's okay to feel silly.
Yes.
It's okay to feel very silly. It feels silly at first. I mean, it is a little silly. We're playing pretend. It's okay. You can feel a little dumb. It's all right. But after that awkward first push, I think it's important to allow yourself the freedom to explore what you wish to explore, and realize that people, if you're going to put down nuance, people will pick up nuance. And that your story is, you know, like I said, art imitates life. We are, each of us, wholly unique, and each story that we would like to tell that way is unique. And LARP is a collaborative space, and so the more different type of people are in it, the more colorful stories become. And I think that is incredibly important, and it's important to remember that, oh wow, it may feel nerve-wracking or a little bit scary being the only POC in a space, you know, or maybe only one of a handful that are there, that your story is inherently valuable. And even in some of those spaces more so, because those are things that people around have never gotten to experience or never gotten to see told. You can be the Black protagonist that you've always wanted to see in media. It's you, you know? And honestly, I am living my Black soft girl dream, damsel in distress dreams. I read books and novels and always wanted to be that. And now I'm living that life. And, you know, who knows? You might end up getting a crazy vampire suitor you have to defeat. And it's great. I highly recommend it.
Who doesn't need like a vampire suitor to defeat everyone?
I know. Goals, honestly. I'm living it.
I'm definitely vibing with what you're saying, and I think it's so exciting to talk to somebody who has also had to sort of like navigate these spaces, because I think that Jess and I have that in common. Is one of the things that we absolutely vibe on. But to be able to hear it from somebody who again has been able to touch so many lives and has had this transformative experience is really dope.
Thank you.
Yeah,
inspiring for sure.
I think, you know, too, like being multiracial is like, because so like for those in the audience, multiracial is just like way more than 2 or more races. You know, I grew up in Black culture, but I myself I understand I'm pretty ambiguous looking. I don't have traditionally what would be considered Black features. You know, I have an older sister who does, but in my career, I have been told, you know, I am not enough, or I'm not this enough. I'm too ambiguous. I don't look like anything at all, or I'm bad representation because I'm not Black enough, or I'm not this enough, or whatever the case. And I have had to come to terms with my own type of self-acceptance where it's like, I don't, first off, don't have to choose. I am everything, but also nothing. And I exist in this void, and that's okay. I've grown to love that void. And there are a lot of other people that also exist in that void. And I am something that's a product of globalization and colonization. And it's something that I'm kind of a new thing on the earth, and that's pretty neat, and I'm going to embrace that fully. And if I have the opportunity to put myself out there and show other people that people like me deserve to exist, and also that, you know, people of color in general, we don't always have to fit a mold of what you think we should look like.
100%. Exactly. Yeah, trying to fit that mold is a no-win scenario. Yeah. So you just have to get to a point where you embrace what and who you are.
Yes, exactly. You'll be better off for it anyway.
And so all the stories. I really do. Again, I appreciate that, especially as somebody who has like mixed children. You know, my kids are also multiracial, and it is really wonderful to know, like, because you know they grew up in my household, they were gonna be nerds from the start. So like, so great for them to have, you know, someone like you to look to and be like, you know, this space has been carved out, and I can make it my own, and I can tell this story, and it can be just as rich, or if not more so, than what already exists there. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think LARP is constantly a transforming space. You know, it grows as people grow, and you know, I know New England has a tough reputation with LARP in that aspect, and that's excuse me. That is mostly because, you know, people of color have not been put in positions where they have agency or can help create interesting narratives or be part of meaningful change. They're not given the power to make meaningful change. They're put in vanity roles so that they could say they've hit this quota, or that, oh, POC are involved, they're writers. And really what would make change and what would grow this community is giving people the tools to not only make their own experiences, but also actually having allies lift them and be like, we're going to let you make these calls and these decisions because we need to hear your voice. And there are so many POC voices out there that deserve to be heard. And, you know, it's a little bit too common that, you know, white communities will uplift like the one POC voice that agrees with like everything that they say. And they're like, oh, but this is the one that we like. Yeah. And this is the one that we're going to show everybody and work with. And that's not okay. We are not a monolith. Everybody has different thoughts, opinions, and views. And those views, just like we are all in color, are also all in color. Right. And it's important to acknowledge that. And I think something like what you guys are doing here with Decolonize and Discover is really important and something that's desperately needed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for calling that out too. Like, you're absolutely right. It's rough here in New England.
I'm so sorry.
Journee and I, we're from this area, and I remember I got into LARP, I don't want to say late in life, but definitely not when I was a kid. It was in my mid-20s, and just walking into that space that I had admired for so long, I was like, oh, this is why I never felt quite right walking in here. Nobody looks like me. Nobody shares my background, my experiences. Even the content of the LARPs is often very Eurocentric. There are LARP conventions that won't even let BIPOC centered LARPs happen because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know, as white organizers, how do we moderate this? How do we keep this safe? They don't trust, us to be able to create, our own corners of these spaces. So yeah, it's rough. It's rough in New England.
There's also something to say where it's like, it's not just about that, it's about their comfort too.
Right.
And acknowledging, things that make them uncomfortable. They don't want to do that. And so they rather just pretend that colonialization never happened at all, instead of allowing players to play on that and embrace that or make that a part of their characters because, oh, it makes our white compatriots uncomfortable. Well, then why does it make you uncomfortable? Maybe that's the more important thing to be examined than policing POC's narratives. I think is a really important thing to keep in mind.
Exactly.
Always like, do you know who else was uncomfortable?
Yeah, with all this whole time, actually.
Yes.
For years, in fact.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's always, I guess it's never shocking, but it is always tiring to me how people will choose to ignore these things, right? And kind of shove them down and try to walk past them rather than address them or educate themselves, and in an effort to do anything better.
You're absolutely right, Journee. There's this conflict constantly in the community of LARP communities, I have to give credit, are some of the safest communities out there because it is a community that is so focused on consent. Right. It's a community that's so focused on making sure people are comfortable, making sure people are bought into the experiences that they're experiencing. But at the same time, there is this very white-centric idea of where comfort stops, where that zone of comfort belongs. Yes. And, race and background and nationality and all of these facets of our identities are often not allowed to be in that comfort space because they make the organizers uncomfortable.
Exactly. And I recently just went over to the UK for an experience called Giovanni the Last Supper. And as far as I know, it is the first LARP in the world to be run by a Black trans man.
Whoa. Okay.
And it was the first LARP on the scale of an international blockbuster to ever be run by POC in general. That's period. Amazing. So they knocked they shot some bows into the sky and killed a couple of birds with one stone, all right? Yes. And when they were there, they made it very clear that, hey, it was like the 1500s, so the transatlantic slave trade did not exist yet. But you could play on racism and discrimination or exotification, and it was for the POC to opt in. And it was the POC that would opt in for him and be like, I'm okay with this. I want to explore this. And then there was actually prompts for people to engage with that. So if, let's say, a white player or any other player was going to come up to you and say something, the prompt was, let me tell you something about your people. And then if you wanted to engage, you would say, what do you know about my people? Or if you didn't want to engage, you would say, you know nothing about my people.
Oh, that's clever.
And that's it. And that's all it would be. And it would be dropped. And
how simple.
How simple. And it was a super easy, flawless mechanic. And it was the first time that I ever, at a LARP, ever, in 11 years of doing this, got to play a narrative that felt like my own story. It was like, my narrative was like Django plus Red Shoes plus Raquel's trauma. And it was excellent. And the more spaces like that need to be, and you can bet there was a little bit of chafing with white players, because there was a huge thing with the American players who were like, hey, play on it. You came to this LARP, it was in big bold letters that this was going to be included in it. And if you don't uplift us, or like, it's totally fine if you don't really want to engage with this, but like, we're asking you in good faith to play with the themes that you agreed to play with when you came here. And they did. And it gave a really wonderful, fruitful experience. And we need more of that. LARP is just telling stories. There is plenty of opportunity for LARPs to be removed from that and just be purely fantasy and have nothing to do with real world. But just as there are LARPs hundreds of LARPs that go into darker and grittier topics, we're fine with murder. We're fine with, religious oppression. But oh boy, you bring racism into it. All of a sudden we can't do that anymore. And I think the questions we really have to ask is, who are we protecting here? Is it the POC that want to engage with this, or is it white sensibility?
Absolutely. And that example just goes to show it can be done. You have to be sensitive about it. You have to make sure you're keeping people safe and secure. But there's no reason why these topics can't be explored in this controlled setting when
all adults.
When it's run by people who have these experiences, who know what they're doing, and who really understand the lines that can and cannot be crossed.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, we're all adults here. If we're all consenting in a space and we want to explore these things, I think that's totally fine. What I don't like is when, you're dealing with a LARP that is supposed to be happening during a historical period, and then they're just like, we're just gonna delete this
hand
racism.
wave it away.
Yeah, we're just gonna hand wave this. Napoleonic Wars never happened, but for some reason there's still a silk trade. Okay. Don't know how that happened, but sure. So like, I think spaces like Decolonize and Discover give us the opportunity to talk about these things in a more in-depth way, where we can acknowledge where we would like to grow as a community, and also what we can do to support each other to get there.
Yes, 100%. Thank you for that. I am so excited. To have you involved with Decolonize and Discover this year. I was saying before we recorded, I was like, I'm developing a squish, because I really do vibe with so much of what you're saying, and I just think it's going to be so exciting to hear you speak and see you do your thing, and hopefully join us for some LARPportunities.
Heck yeah. You said LARP, I'm there.
So we will definitely have LARP and so much more. We've got a packed weekend for Juneteenth weekend this year.
Wow.
June 16th through 18th. Tickets are available now at decolonizeanddiscover.com. And you'll be able to see so many talented individuals, including Raquel. But if people want to see you before then, if they want to keep up with you and what you're doing, how can they reach out or keep up with what you're doing online?
I am lucky enough to have my small corner of niche internet fame, where if you Google me, I do come up under Raquel Skellington. Everything's there. It's a little spooky. But you can look me up on YouTube, where I have all sorts of videos that go into the theory behind LARP and what LARPing is and how to do certain role play safely, as well as my own personal experiences going to different LARPs. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook and sometimes Twitter, all under Raquel Skellington. I'd love to see you guys there.
Yes. Oh my goodness, so exciting. Thank you again for joining us today. And we're just going to completely skip over the fact that we had technical issues. Great. That's great.
Just going to pretend that didn't happen.
How will they know?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to...
We appreciate you so much, Raquel. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me. You're both wonderful.